So it looks like shit is going to hit the fan with the economy. And in order to protect yourself against that and hedge your bets against what's going to happen in the downturn, it's super important to set up an emergency reserve. And I'm going to teach you exactly what I would do to make sure your ass is covered, because you don't want to get burned when we hit the next recession. Hey, welcome back. If you haven't been to this channel before, you haven't seen my other content, my name is Ethan. And one of the things that I like to do is to help people with their finances, with investing, and making sure that they have a prosperous economic future. One of the issues that we see today in the economy is that there are a lot of danger signs that the next recession is around the corner. Recessions are a normal part of the economy. They're going to happen on a regular basis. They don't need to happen, all that frequently, but we are in the longest bull run or economic good times that we've had in a long time, I think, in the history of the United States. So it's bound to happen sooner or later, and probably sooner rather than later. And one of the things that I think is super important about preparing for a recession and really any kind of shit hits a fan scenario in life is to have a financial backup, some kind of emergency fund set up for that. So let's talk about that today. I want to talk about how to go about setting that up and why I think it is so important. Now, a lot of experts out there in the field of investing, they have different recommendations for what you should do for an emergency fund, right? So let's take a look at a couple different things when people talk about emergency reserves. First, there is the concept of like the basics of life that you need to have covered. That's like, food, toilet paper, toothpaste, all that kind of stuff. That's one type of emergency reserve you need to have. I talk about that in another video, and that's important. I think for everybody to have that kind of buffer for the things they need to get by and survive in life, they absolutely need that. But when it comes to in terms of finances, a lot of people out there recommend at least having 3 months, sometimes even 6 months or more. I like to have 12 months of emergency reserve set up to cover essentially enough for me to get by basic living expenses for 12 months. Now you might think, holy shit, I can't come up with that. That's okay. When you start with nothing, 12 months, building up to 12 months seems like a lot. So don't start with 12 months in mind. Start with 1 month in mind. And if that seems like too much, start with 1 week in mind. Now, when I talk about covering emergency expenses or basic living expenses in your emergency fund, I'm not talking about the amount of money you spend right now on a normal basis, because right now you're spending money on stuff that you actually don't need to live to get by on, right? You're going out to dinner, you're going to the movies, you're going on vacations, you're buying a bunch of shit that you actually don't need in life to survive. And that's good. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We all want to enjoy life. But when it comes down to it, when your back is against the wall and you are in a tough financial situation, you have to cut out all that extra stuff that isn't actually required. And one of the things that you need to focus on is just what is required for you to get by on a day-to-day basis. And those are things like your rent, your mortgage, your utilities, the gas that you need to put in your car, or the groceries you need to buy, the food you need to buy at the grocery store. Not going out to eat for dinner. You don't need to do that, but you do need to eat food. So you need to go out and do your shopping at the grocery store. That's usually the least expensive option when it comes to obtaining food. So you need to take a look at your bare minimum necessities in terms of what your financial requirements are for survival. In today's society, you need to figure out what you spend every month on the bare minimum, the things that are required to get by. And use that as the goalpost for the amount of money that you need to save for each month's worth of reserves that you want to have set up. Now, as I said, a lot of people recommend 3 months or more. I like 12 months because back in 2008, 2009 financial crisis, a lot of people had problems finding work after they got laid off. And I think when I looked at the stats, it was alarming. I mean, I think it was close to a year that it took the average person to find another job if they were laid off. That kind of stuff scares the crap out of me. Like, to be unemployed for a year, that's a huge hit to your financial stature in life. And I don't want anybody to be in a situation where they are basically cut off from financial streams of income for a year. Nobody wants to be in that situation. But if you don't have a backup, you are really fucked. And I don't want you to be in that situation. I certainly don't want to be in that situation myself. And the only way you can really prevent yourself from getting in that situation and being in a bad spot is to build up an emergency reserve. So an emergency reserve fund should not go in your normal checking or savings account. If it's there, you're just going to spend it on stupid shit that you don't need to actually buy. Make sure that you keep your emergency funds in a separate bank account. And I would recommend keeping some of your emergency funds in cash. And the reason I suggest that is that because things are going to go wrong in life with like natural disasters. I mean, you're going to have, in the summer, I know in Minnesota here, we have like tornadoes come through every once in a while, or a really big storm. Even in the winter, we get ice storms, and they'll knock out power for sometimes a couple days. And that's a huge, not only a huge inconvenience, but in the local areas, it can actually shut down power that is required to process credit card transactions. And now that most people rely on their credit card or debit card for transactions, a lot of people don't carry cash around. And if you don't have cash in those situations, you're going to be kind of screwed. If you've got some cash, enough to for example, provide for at least a minimum of one or two, gas tanks in your vehicle, to go to the gas station at least twice to fill up your tanks, and to buy food for maybe a week. Like if you need to go to the grocery store, like 1 week's worth of food, at the grocery store, I would keep in cash somewhere, keep it safe, but always have cash on hand for an emergency reserve. Super important things to keep in mind. Again, if you can't make it up to 12 months for reserves, that's fine. But ultimately, don't give yourself excuses. Like if you were to tell me like you can't do it, it's too much, that's just, in my opinion, a bullshit excuse that you're telling me and other people. It's really a lie, because you just aren't setting your goals high enough, and you aren't having the discipline to set aside some money. Whatever you need to do to build up an emergency fund, I think is so worthwhile. If you feel like you are living paycheck to paycheck, or that you don't have enough money every month, you need to take a look at what you're spending money on and be as frugal as you possibly can to actually build up an emergency reserve fund. It's super, super critical to do that. So anyway, that's all I wanted to cover in this video. There are a lot of other things that I would recommend to do in order to prepare for a recession. There's some things you can do to hedge your bets against an economic downturn in terms of your investments, and I'll do a separate video on that. But at least this video on emergency funds, that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about. Work towards a 12-month emergency reserve fund, at least a 6-month or 3-month, and if you can't get there, start with a week and then move up to a month and move beyond that. So it's definitely worthwhile. I mean, it's your life, it's your family's life. You need to take care of yourself and of your family, so make that thing a priority to get an emergency reserve. All right, thank you guys for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I know you guys have a lot to do. I know life is busy, and you got enough things in your mind that you're worrying about, that the whole idea of a recession and emergency funds and shit hitting the fan in your personal financial life is not something you want to think about. It's not a pleasant thought, but it is important for all of us, I think, to take into consideration what we would need to have at hand if things go wrong. Anyway, if you like this content, please share it, please like it, please subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber, and click that notification icon so you get notified when I upload a new video. And until I see you guys next time, take care, good luck, and I hope you have the best of luck and happiness in everything that you pursue. All of your endeavors, all of your passions, I wish you the best. Take care, guys.